You make six figures. Your bank account grows every month. So why do you still feel broke? Let me tell you about Sarah. Sarah is a software engineer in San Francisco. 5 years ago, she was making $65,000 a year, sharing a cramped apartment with 2 roommates, eating ramen 3 times a week. She dreamed about the day she'd finally make it. Fast forward to today. Sarah now earns $185,000. She has her own place. She can afford nice restaurants. By every objective measure, she's successful. But here's what nobody told her. She feels exactly the same level of financial anxiety she felt 5 years ago, maybe even more. How is this possible? Sarah's story reveals what I call the wealth paradox. It's the strange phenomenon where your income climbs, your lifestyle improves, yet that feeling of enough never quite arrives. You're running faster on the treadmill, but the finish line keeps moving. See, when Sarah made $65,000, she thought, if I could just make $100,000, I'd feel secure. Then she hit $100,000, and suddenly $150,000 became the magic number. Now at $185,000, she's eyeing colleagues making $250,000. And guess what? She still doesn't feel wealthy. The problem isn't the money. It's never been about the money. Think of wealth like water. You can't hold water in your hands no matter how tightly you grip. The harder you squeeze, the more it slips through your fingers. But cup your hands gently, shape them correctly, and the water stays. Most of us are taught to chase wealth by accumulating more. Get the promotion, buy the bigger house, upgrade the car. We treat wealth like a number on a spreadsheet that needs to keep growing. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Research shows that beyond a certain point, around $75,000 to $95,000 depending on where you live, more money doesn't significantly increase happiness or that feeling of financial security. So what's missing? Structure, meaning, geometry. Sarah's money has no shape. It flows in, it flows out. She's never defined what enough actually means to her. She's never built boundaries around her spending. She's never connected her money to what truly matters in her life. Her wealth has no architecture, no foundation, no purpose beyond just more. And this is where most of us live, in this paradox where success feels empty because we've built our financial lives without any real design. We're architects who forgot to draw the blueprint. The geometry of wealth isn't about earning more. It's about shaping what you have into something meaningful. It's about building a structure where your money serves your life, not the other way around. In the chapters ahead, we're going to explore how to escape this paradox, how to build a financial life with clear boundaries, purposeful structure, and deep meaning, how to finally feel wealthy regardless of the number in your bank account. Because here's the secret. Wealth isn't a destination you reach, it's a shape you create. And Sarah, she's about to learn how to reshape everything. Let me tell you about 2 people I knew. Michael made $300,000 a year, designer suits, a Tesla in the driveway, vacations in Bali that made everyone's Instagram feed look dull. He was, by anyone's definition, rich, but Michael couldn't sleep. Every promotion meant longer hours. Every bonus came with higher expectations. He was trapped on what he called the achievement treadmill, running faster and faster, but never actually arriving anywhere that felt like enough. Then there was Sarah. She made $60,000 a year as a teacher. She drove a 10-year-old Honda. Her apartment was small but filled with light. Sarah had something Michael didn't. She had funded her contentment. She knew exactly what brought meaning to her life. Time with her daughter, her pottery hobby, Sunday morning hikes. And she had structured her finances to protect those things. She wasn't rich, she was wealthy. This is the distinction that changes everything. Being rich is about having money. Being wealthy is about having a life funded by purpose. Think of it this way. Imagine your life as a garden. Being rich means you have expensive tools, top-shelf fertilizer, and every gadget the store sells. But being wealthy, that means you're actually growing something you want to harvest. You know why you're tending this garden in the first place. The rich person asks, how much money do I have? The wealthy person asks, does my money serve the life I actually want to live? Here's the uncomfortable truth. You can be rich and miserable. We see it every day. High earners burning out, executives with golden handcuffs, people living in beautiful houses that feel like prisons. But you cannot be wealthy and miserable. Because wealth, in this framework, is the intersection of your resources and your contentment. It's when your financial life is geometrically aligned with what brings you meaning. Brian Portnoy, the author of The Geometry of Wealth, calls this funded contentment, not happiness, that's too fleeting, not pleasure, that's too shallow, contentment, that deep, sustainable sense that your life has shape and meaning. So here's the question that matters. What does contentment cost for you? For some, it might mean the freedom to work 3 days a week. For others, it's the ability to say no to projects that drain your soul. It might be as simple as knowing you can handle an emergency without panic, or as profound as having the time to be present when your kids come home from school. Michael eventually figured this out. He took a lower-paying job with better hours, downsized his life, started sleeping again. His friends thought he was crazy for stepping backward, but he wasn't moving backward. He was moving from rich to wealthy. The geometry of wealth isn't about maximizing your net worth. It's about shaping a life where money serves meaning, not the other way around. Where your resources, however large or small, are precisely calibrated to fund what contentment actually costs for you. That's the difference. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. Because being rich is about the numbers in your account. But being wealthy, that's about the life those numbers make possible. Meet Sarah. 3 years ago, she was convinced that one thing stood between her and happiness: her cramped apartment. Every morning, she'd wake up staring at the same beige walls, dreaming of the day she'd finally afford that spacious loft with floor-to-ceiling windows. Then it happened. A promotion, a raise, and 6 months later, Sarah got the keys to her dream apartment. That first month, pure bliss. She'd wake up early just to watch the sunrise through those massive windows. She'd invite friends over constantly. She felt like she'd finally made it. But here's what Sarah didn't expect. By month 4, she stopped noticing the windows. By month 6, the loft was just her apartment. The same beige walls, different address. She was already browsing listings for places with a better view. This is the hedonic treadmill, and every single one of us is running on it right now. Imagine actual treadmill at a gym. You can run as fast as you want, pour every ounce of energy into it, but you never actually move forward. You stay in exactly the same spot. That's what happens with happiness and material upgrades. We adapt, we normalize, we recalibrate. Psychologists call this hedonic adaptation, and the research is startling. Studies of lottery winners show that within just 1 year, they return to approximately the same level of happiness they had before winning. 1 year, millions of dollars, same happiness. But here's the twist that most people miss. The hedonic treadmill doesn't just apply to positive changes. It works in reverse too. Research on accident victims who became paraplegics showed that within a year, they too returned close to their baseline happiness levels. Think about that. We adapt to both windfalls and catastrophes. Your brain is running a constant recalibration program. That luxury car, thrilling for 3 months, then it's just your car. That salary bump, exciting until your expenses rise to match it and it becomes your new normal. That relationship milestone, that vacation, that gadget you saved up for. Your brain processes each one, extracts the dopamine hit, then resets. So does this mean we're doomed? That nothing we do actually matters for happiness? Not quite. And this is where the geometry of wealth offers us a lifeline. The author argues that understanding the hedonic treadmill isn't depressing, it's liberating. Because once you know you'll adapt to almost anything, you stop chasing upgrades as a path to fulfillment. You stop believing the lie that the next purchase, the next milestone, the next achievement will be the one that finally makes you happy. Instead, you can design your life around things that actually resist hedonic adaptation. Research shows these exist: experiences over possessions, relationships over status symbols, growth over achievement, giving over getting. Sarah, she eventually figured this out. She stopped apartment hunting and started investing in weekly dinners with friends. Same apartment, different life. And this time, the happiness didn't fade after 3 months. The hedonic treadmill never stops running, but you can choose to step off it. The question isn't what you need to buy to be happy. The question is, what kind of life can you build that doesn't depend on constantly needing more? Because the geometry of wealth isn't about accumulation, it's about architecture. And the most elegant structures aren't built on sand that constantly shifts. They're built on foundations that last. Meet Sarah. At 25, she landed her first real job, making $45,000 a year. She was thrilled. She found a modest studio apartment for $800 a month, drove her old Honda Civic, and packed lunches most days. She even managed to save $400 every month. Life felt good. Fast forward 5 years. Sarah now makes $85,000, nearly double her starting salary. She'd crushed it at work, earned promotions, and by all measures, she was winning. So naturally, when her lease came up, she moved to that nicer apartment with a rooftop deck. Only $1,800 a month. Still affordable, right? And the Civic? Well, it was getting old. She leased a sleek new SUV, just $520 a month. Professional people drive nice cars. She deserved it. The coffee runs became daily rituals at the Artisan Cafe. Groceries shifted from the budget store to Whole Foods. Weekend brunches became a habit. A Peloton joined her living room. Each decision felt small, reasonable, earned. Here's what Sarah didn't notice. At $45,000, she saved $400 a month, about 11% of her income. Now at $85,000, she was saving $350 a month. Despite nearly doubling her income, she was actually saving less money and a drastically smaller percentage of what she earned. She'd fallen victim to lifestyle creep, the silent wealth killer that stalks every pay raise, every bonus, every promotion. Lifestyle creep doesn't announce itself. It doesn't feel like failure. In fact, it feels like success. You're finally affording the life you always imagined. But here's the cruel geometry of it. While your income might grow linearly, your lifestyle expectations can grow exponentially. That gap between what you earn and what you keep, that's where wealth lives. And lifestyle creep slowly, quietly closes that gap until it disappears entirely. Think of wealth building like filling a bathtub. Your income is the faucet, your lifestyle is the drain. Early in Sarah's career, her drain was small. Water accumulated. But with each lifestyle upgrade, she opened that drain wider and wider. Now her faucet runs twice as strong, but the tub fills slowly. Some people increase their drain so much that even with a fire hose income, they never accumulate any depth at all. The most dangerous part? Lifestyle creep creates golden handcuffs. Sarah now needs that $85,000 just to maintain her baseline. She can't easily downshift. She's trapped herself into needing her job, her income, her stress level just to stand still. The life she designed to reward her success now demands her continued sacrifice. But here's what the geometry of wealth teaches us. The path to financial freedom isn't paved with bigger apartments and luxury cars. It's built in that sacred gap between earning and spending. Every percentage point of income you defend against lifestyle inflation becomes a soldier in your army of wealth. Sarah's story isn't about deprivation or living like a monk forever. It's about consciousness. It's about asking, is this upgrade expanding my life's meaning or just expanding my expenses? Because the math is unforgiving. If your lifestyle keeps perfect pace with your income, you'll work forever. But if you can capture even half of each raise, half of each bonus, and direct it toward investments rather than inflation, you bend the curve. You break free. The geometry of wealth demands we shape our lives intentionally, not let them be shaped by the gravitational pull of what we can afford. Because affordability is a trap. You can afford many things that will keep you poor. The real question is, what will keep you free?
Sarah was finally happy. After years of saving, she bought her dream car, a sleek sedan that made her smile every morning. For 3 glorious weeks, she felt on top of the world. Then her neighbor pulled into the driveway with a luxury SUV. Overnight, Sarah's dream car became ordinary. The leather seats she loved, now they felt cheap. The engine she once bragged about, suddenly inadequate. Nothing about the car had changed, but everything had changed. This is the social comparison trap, and it's silently destroying our relationship with money. Here's what's really happening. We don't measure wealth in absolute terms. We measure it in relative terms. A millionaire feels poor at a billionaire's party. A six-figure earner feels broke in a seven-figure neighborhood. Brian Portnoy calls this the hedonic treadmill of comparison. You're running as fast as you can, but the finish line keeps moving because it's attached to someone else's pace. Think of it like this. Imagine you're climbing a mountain, feeling proud of how high you've climbed. Then you notice someone above you. Suddenly, your achievement vanishes. You're not enjoying the view anymore. You're just staring up at the gap. But here's the cruel twist. Even when you catch up, the trap resets. Because there's always another mountain. Always another neighbor. Always another Instagram post showing someone's perfect life. The geometry of wealth reveals something profound. This comparison trap isn't just making us want more, it's making us fundamentally incapable of feeling enough. Your brain is literally hardwired for relative comparison. It's an evolutionary survival mechanism. 10,000 years ago, comparing yourself to the tribe kept you alive. But today, it keeps you broke and miserable. Social media has turned this ancient mechanism into a weapon of mass dissatisfaction. Every scroll is a comparison. Every post is a measuring stick. We're comparing our behind the scenes to everyone else's highlight reel. Portnoy shares a powerful insight. Wealth isn't about having more than you need. It's about needing less than you have. But the comparison trap inverts this completely. It makes you need more than you'll ever have. So what's the escape route? First, recognize that the game is rigged. There is no winning. The only winning move is to stop playing. Second, define your enough before looking at what others have. Sarah's car was perfect until comparison poisoned it. Your enough disappears the moment you let others define it for you. Third, understand that what you see isn't real. That neighbor's luxury SUV? It might be leased with debt they can't afford. That vacation photo? Could be maxed out credit cards. You're comparing your reality to someone else's carefully crafted illusion. The geometry of wealth teaches us that true financial peace comes from internal measurement, not external comparison. Sarah's story doesn't have to end with envy. She could remember why she chose that car. She could feel the leather seats again, not as less than, but as exactly what she wanted. She could measure her life by her own values, not her neighbor's purchases. The social comparison trap promises you'll be happy when you catch up, but it's lying. Happiness isn't at the top of someone else's mountain. It's found when you stop climbing theirs and start enjoying your own view.
Let me tell you about two people I know. Mark spent 20 years climbing. Every promotion, every bonus, every stock option, he grabbed it. His net worth hit 7 figures, then 8. He bought the house, the cars, the vacation property. But here's the thing. At his daughter's college graduation, when she thanked her mom in her speech and barely mentioned him, Mark realized he'd been so busy building wealth that he'd forgotten what it was supposed to be for. Then there's Sarah. She's a high school art teacher. She'll never be rich by conventional standards. But she calculated something different. She figured out exactly how much money she needed to live in her small town, travel once a year to see her grandkids, and keep her pottery studio running. Once she hit that number in her retirement accounts, she stopped worrying. She started saying yes to teaching the after-school program she loves, even though it doesn't pay extra. She has what Brian Portnoy calls funded contentment. This is the geometry that most people get backwards. We think wealth is a number that keeps growing. The bigger, the better, forever. But Portnoy shows us something radical. Wealth isn't about having the most money. It's about having enough money to underwrite the life that actually matters to you. Think of it like building a house. You need a foundation strong enough to support the structure you actually want to live in. But nobody builds a foundation and then just keeps making it thicker and thicker forever. That's not architecture. That's obsession. Funded contentment means asking yourself, what does my meaningful life actually cost? Not your neighbor's life. Not the life Instagram tells you to want. Your life. The one where you're present for the moments that matter. Where you have the freedom to make choices based on purpose instead of panic. Maybe that's the freedom to take a lower paying job that feeds your soul. Maybe it's saying no to the promotion that would destroy your evenings with your kids. Maybe it's finally having enough saved that you stop checking your account balance with that knot in your stomach. Here's what Portnoy discovered. The wealthiest people aren't the ones with the biggest portfolios. They're the ones who've closed the gap between what they have and what they actually need for a life of meaning. That gap, that distance between enough and your current reality, that's what steals your sleep. That's what drives the anxiety. And here's the beautiful part. You can close that gap from either direction. You can earn more, yes, but you can also get crystal clear about what enough really means for you. Mark eventually figured this out. He didn't quit his job or give away his money, but he restructured his definition of success. He started measuring wealth differently, not by his net worth statement, but by whether he had enough to be present for the life he'd been missing. Funded contentment isn't about settling or giving up ambition. It's about directing your ambition toward what actually matters. It's about making money your tool, not your master. So here's the question Portnoy wants you to ask. What would it actually cost to fund your contentment? Not your fantasy, not your fear, your genuine, meaningful life. Because once you know that number, once you have a real target, everything changes. Your money finally has a purpose. And you finally have a foundation strong enough to build the life you actually want to live.
Imagine you're holding a compass in your hand. Not just any compass, one with 4 cardinal points. But instead of north, south, east, and west, this compass reads connection, control, context, and competence. This is the geometry of a wealthy life. Not wealthy in the sense of numbers on a screen, but wealthy in the way that makes you wake up on a Tuesday morning and feel alive. Let me tell you about Marcus. Marcus spent 15 years climbing. Bigger titles, bigger paychecks, bigger house. He was competent, brilliantly so. He could solve problems others couldn't even see. But here's what haunted him. At his father's funeral, when people shared stories, Marcus realized he missed everything. Birthday parties canceled for meetings. Relationships maintained through holiday cards. He had built competence in a vacuum. The first point on our compass is connection. Real wealth means your money serves your relationships, not the other way around. Marcus had resources, but no one to share them with. Connection asks, are you building a portfolio or are you building a life woven into the fabric of people you love? The second point is control. Not control over markets or control over outcomes, control over your choices. Sarah, a teacher making $60,000 a year, has more control than most executives I know. She has no debt. She saves 40% of her income. She can say no to anything that doesn't align with her values. Control isn't about having more, it's about needing less. The third point, context. Here's where most people stumble. They're running a race they never chose to enter. Context means understanding the shape of your life, not your neighbor's, not your college roommate's Instagram feed. When you understand your context, your values, your season of life, your actual goals, money becomes a tool instead of a scoreboard. And finally, competence. Yes, skills matter, knowledge matters, but competence in this geometry isn't just about earning. It's about the confidence that comes from knowing you can navigate whatever comes. It's about financial literacy, yes, but also emotional resilience. It's about being able to adapt when the world shifts beneath your feet. Here's the beautiful part. These 4 points create a shape. When all 4 are strong, they form a stable foundation, like 4 legs of a table. But when one is missing, everything wobbles. Marcus had confidence but no connection. The table collapsed. Someone with deep connections but no control, drowning in debt to maintain appearances, their table collapses too. Someone confident, connected, and in control, but living in someone else's context, they'll build a beautiful life that feels like a prison. The geometry of wealth isn't about perfection. It's about awareness. It's about asking yourself regularly, which point on my compass needs attention? Where am I out of balance? Because here's the truth that no one tells you. You can be broke by every traditional measure and still be geometrically wealthy. And you can have millions and be geometrically bankrupt. The question isn't how much you have. The question is, does the shape of your financial life match the shape of the life you actually want to live? That's the geometry that matters. That's the wealth worth building.
Let me tell you about my friend Marcus. For 15 years, Marcus chased the horizon. Every promotion, every raise, every bonus, it was never quite enough. He made 60,000, then needed 80. Hit 100, suddenly needed 150. At 200,000 a year, he still felt behind. Then his father died unexpectedly at 62. Marcus inherited nothing dramatic, just some old photo albums and a letter. In it, his dad wrote, "I always thought I'd travel with your mother when I made enough. I never did figure out what enough was." This is the tyranny of more. It's not greed, it's something more insidious. It's running a race with no finish line, where the track keeps extending itself. So how do we escape it? We draw our own finish line. We define our enough. Here's how this actually works. First, calculate your freedom number. Not your fantasy number, your freedom number. Ask yourself, what does a rich life actually cost me, specifically? Start with your core expenses: housing, food, healthcare, transportation. Not the luxury version, the comfortable version. For most people, this is somewhere between $3,000 and $6,000 a month. Then add meaning costs. This is what makes your life rich. Maybe it's 2 international trips a year. Maybe it's pottery classes. Maybe it's funding your kids' education debt-free. Maybe it's giving 10% to causes you believe in. This isn't about deprivation, it's about intention. Now multiply your monthly number by 12, then by 25. This is your freedom number, the amount that, invested conservatively, generates enough passive income to sustain your rich life forever, using the 4% rule. For someone whose rich life costs $6,000 a month, $72,000 a year, that's $1.8 million. I know what you're thinking. That's impossible. But here's what changes. Once you name the number, you can actually work toward it. Unnamed, it's always just more. Named, it becomes achievable. The second step is harder. Commit to it publicly. Tell your partner, tell a friend, write it down, and date it. Because here's what happens without commitment. You'll hit your number and immediately move the goalposts. Well, maybe I should aim for 2.5 million just to be safe. Then 3, then 5. Marcus did this exercise. His number was 2.1 million. He was already at 1.6. Suddenly, he could see the finish line. He stopped taking every extra shift, started having dinner with his kids, took his wife to Portugal, something they'd delayed for 8 years. He's not there yet, but he's running towards something now, not away from something. Defining your enough doesn't mean you stop growing or earning. It means you stop letting the pursuit of more steal the life you're earning it for. It means you know when you've won. So here's your homework. Sit down this week, actually block 30 minutes on your calendar, and calculate your number. Be honest. Be specific. Write it down, because somewhere out there, there's a finish line with your name on it, but you have to be the one to draw it. Sarah opens her bank account every Friday afternoon. She sees her paycheck has arrived. $2,300. She smiles, pays a few bills, and then she waits. She tells herself she'll transfer money to savings after she sees what's left. By Wednesday, somehow there's only $87 remaining. She has no idea where it went. This is the consumption trap, and it's not about discipline, it's about design. Imagine your income as a river flowing toward your life. Now picture 2 channels at the river's source. The first channel is narrow but deep. It diverts water automatically to a reservoir before the river reaches your town. The second channel, that's everything else. It flows freely to where you live, where you spend, where you consume. The secret isn't building a dam downstream after you've already used the water. The secret is engineering the split at the source. This is what Portnoy calls paying yourself first. But it's more than a principle. It's a system that removes you from the equation entirely. Because here's the uncomfortable truth. We are terrible judges of how much we can afford to save when money is already sitting in our checking account. Behavioral economists call this mental accounting. When money lives in your spending account, your brain has already categorized it as available. It whispers, "You earned this. You deserve that dinner out. Those shoes are on sale." And it's not wrong. You did earn it. But without automated systems, lifestyle creep becomes inevitable. Lifestyle creep is the silent wealth killer. You get a raise. Your income increases by $3,000 a year. You think, great, I'll save more now. But mysteriously, your expenses also rise by $3,000. Nicer coffee, slightly better apartment, a few more streaming services. None of it feels extravagant. Yet your savings rate hasn't budged. The antidote is ruthlessly simple. Automate wealth building before you see the money. On the day your paycheck hits, not 3 days later, not when you get around to it, automatic transfers should execute to your 401k, to your IRA, to your brokerage account, to your emergency fund. This isn't about willpower, it's about architecture. Here's what Sarah did differently. She set up her finances like a series of locks in a canal system. The moment her paycheck deposits, 20% diverts automatically to her Roth IRA. Another 10% flows to her investment account, 5% to her emergency fund. Only then does the remaining 65% reach her checking account. And here's the revelation. She doesn't miss it. Why? Because she never touched it. She never saw it as spending money. Her brain never categorized it as available for consumption. She designed a system that aligned with human psychology instead of fighting against it. The geometry of wealth isn't about perfection, it's about structure. It's about building systems that make the right choice the automatic choice. When your wealth building is automated, lifestyle creep loses its power. Your savings grow in the background while you live your life. You're not constantly resisting temptation. You've simply removed yourself from that daily negotiation. The question isn't whether you have discipline. The question is, have you built a system that makes discipline unnecessary? Because in the battle between your intentions and your environment wins every time. So stop trying to be stronger. Start building smarter systems. Automate your wealth building. And watch your future self thank you for the architecture you created today.
Close your eyes and think back to your childhood. What do you remember more vividly? The expensive toy you begged for, or that summer evening catching fireflies with your best friend? Let me tell you about Sarah. Last year, she saved up $3,000. She stood in her apartment, staring at two paths: a designer couch she'd been eyeing for months, or a 2-week trip to Japan she'd been dreaming about since college. She chose the couch, beautiful leather, perfect stitching. For the first week, every time she walked into her living room, she felt a little thrill. By month 2, it was just furniture, a place to sit. Within 6 months, she barely noticed it anymore. It had become invisible, absorbed into the background of her life like wallpaper. Here's what the research shows us and what Sarah learned the hard way. Material purchases suffer from what psychologists call hedonic adaptation. It's a fancy term for a simple truth. We get used to our stuff. That new car smell fades. That smartphone becomes just a phone. The shine wears off, and we're left chasing the next thing. But experiences? They work differently in our brains. They don't fade, they actually appreciate over time. That trip to Japan Sarah never took? Her friend Emma took it instead. And here's what happened. Emma came back with stories. She learned to make ramen from a grandmother in Kyoto. She got lost in Tokyo and discovered a tiny jazz bar. She watched the sun rise over Mount Fuji with strangers who became friends. Today, a year later, Emma still talks about that trip. The memories haven't dulled. They've been polished by retelling, enriched by reflection, woven into the fabric of who she is. When Emma feels stressed, she closes her eyes and she's back on that mountain. When she meets new people, she has stories that create connection. That trip didn't just give her 2 weeks of happiness, it gave her a permanent expansion of her identity. Think of material possessions like ice cubes. Solid at first, but they melt into nothing, leaving barely a trace. Experiences are like planting seeds. They grow, they branch out, they create forests in your memory that you can walk through for the rest of your life. And here's the beautiful paradox. Experiences actually cost less than we think, while things cost more than we realize. That couch needs a bigger apartment. It needs insurance. It needs to be moved, maintained, eventually replaced. But that concert you attended, that cooking class, that road trip with your sister, zero maintenance cost, infinite returns. The geometry of wealth teaches us that true wealth isn't measured by what we own, it's measured by who we become and what we remember. Every experience is an investment in your most valuable asset, yourself. So the next time you're holding money in your hand, ask yourself, will this purchase still matter to me in 5 years? Will it shape who I am, or will it just take up space? Sarah eventually saved up again. This time, she chose differently. She went to Japan. And now, when she sits on her old, worn couch, she's not thinking about the couch at all. She's remembering the taste of fresh sushi at dawn in Tsukiji Market. She's smiling at the memory of trying to use chopsticks while a Japanese child giggled at her technique. The couch is just a couch, but Japan made her rich.
Sarah stands in the cereal aisle paralyzed. 47 varieties stretch before her. Honey clusters, ancient grains, organic, keto-friendly. Her cart sits empty. 15 minutes pass. She finally grabs one at random, walks away feeling defeated, not satisfied, defeated. This is what psychologist Barry Schwartz calls the paradox of choice. And it's not just happening in grocery stores, it's happening in your investment accounts right now. The geometry of wealth reveals something counterintuitive. More financial options don't make us happier. They make us anxious, frozen, and perpetually second-guessing ourselves. Think about it. You open your 401k. There are 37 investment funds, large cap, small cap, international, emerging markets, target date funds for every year between now and 2065. You freeze, just like Sarah. So you either pick nothing or you spread your money across everything like you're hedging your bets at a casino. But here's what the research shows. People with fewer investment options are more likely to participate in their retirement plans. They contribute more. And paradoxically, they report higher satisfaction with their choices. Brian Portnoy, the author, shares the story of a financial advisor who did something radical. He took a client's portfolio from 14 different investment positions down to 3. Just 3. The client had been losing sleep, constantly checking performance, wondering if he should swap this fund for that one. His financial life had become a part-time job. After the simplification, the client slept better. He stopped obsessively checking his accounts. His returns didn't suffer. In fact, they improved slightly because he wasn't panic selling and chasing trends anymore. The geometry here is profound. Imagine your financial life as a shape. Most of us have created something with dozens of jagged edges, each one a decision point, each one requiring attention and energy. We think complexity equals sophistication. We think more moving parts mean we're being thorough. But the most stable, most beautiful geometric forms are simple: a circle, a triangle, clean lines, few points of failure. Simplification isn't about dumbing down your finances. It's about freeing up your most valuable resource, your mental energy. Every extra account you maintain, every additional investment you monitor, every credit card you juggle, these aren't just administrative tasks. They're cognitive taxes you pay every single day. Portnoy argues that wealth isn't just about having money, it's about having a life of meaning. And meaning requires attention. When your attention is fragmented across 17 different financial accounts and 43 investment positions, there's nothing left for what actually matters. Here's your action step. Conduct a financial audit this week. List every account, every subscription, every investment position. Then ask yourself, which of these actually move the needle? Which could I consolidate? Which am I keeping just because I'm afraid of making the wrong choice by letting go? The freedom you're seeking isn't found in having more options. It's found in confidently choosing less. Because in the geometry of wealth, the shortest distance between you and contentment isn't a complex maze of possibilities. It's a simple, clear line, one you can actually follow without getting lost. Maria sits in her corner office on the 47th floor. She's just closed the biggest deal of her career, 7 figures in commission. But as she stares at the congratulatory email on her screen, she feels nothing. She remembers her grandfather, who ran a small bakery for 40 years. He never made much money, but every evening he'd come home smelling of bread and cinnamon, laughing about the customers he'd served that day. He died with almost nothing in the bank, yet hundreds came to his funeral. Maria has 20 times his wealth, and she can't remember the last time she laughed. This is the moment when we must build our wealth identity, not the one society hands us, but the one that actually fits who we are. The geometry of wealth teaches us that your wealth identity isn't about choosing between money and meaning. It's about understanding that money is simply a tool, and like any tool, its value depends entirely on what you build with. Think of it like this. Imagine you're given the finest violin ever made. If you don't know what music you want to play, that violin is just an expensive object collecting dust. But once you know your song, once you define what success actually means to you, that same violin becomes the instrument of something beautiful. Your wealth identity is your song. Building it requires 3 commitments. First, you must define enough. Not more, not maximum, enough. What does financial security actually look like for you? Not for your neighbor, not for your college roommate who posts vacation photos, for you. Maybe it's a paid-off home and the ability to take Fridays off. Maybe it's something else entirely. But until you define enough, you'll be chasing a horizon that keeps moving. Second, you must integrate your values with your financial decisions. Every dollar you spend or save is a vote for the life you want. If you say, family matters most, but work 70 hours a week, your wealth identity is out of alignment. If you value creativity, but never invest in experiences that feed your soul, you're lying to yourself with a spreadsheet. Third, and this is the hardest, you must give yourself permission to define success differently than you were taught. Maybe success isn't the corner office. Maybe it's the flexibility to coach your kid's soccer team. Maybe it's not retirement at 65 with millions, but a modest lifestyle that lets you pursue your art now while your hands are steady and your heart is full. The geometry of wealth isn't about building the biggest structure. It's about building the right structure, one that shelters what matters most to you. Maria eventually made a choice. She took a position that paid half as much, but let her work with nonprofits she believed in. She started baking on weekends like her grandfather. The bread never turned out quite right, but her apartment filled with that same smell of warmth and purpose. She built less wealth in her bank account, but she built more wealth in her life. Your wealth identity is waiting to be shaped, not by accumulation, but by intention. Not by what you acquire, but by what you become. The question isn't how much you'll have at the end. The question is, what will you have built, and will it have been worth building?